Well, that's the thing. They are a minority, yet they are so incredibly well organized. They are, I would say, passionate about this, whereas, many of us who look at this and think, oh, this is weird, we don't have that passion, we don't have that fire.
Well, I talked to somebody
today,
and that's going around too. We don't have the fire or the passion.
Well, it's not drummed into our heads the way it is by the, people like, Glenn Beck, David Barton, who has a daily radio show, and others that constantly reinforce, you have to get out and vote, you have to get out and vote, you have to get out and vote, for everything from local elections to state elections to national elections, and it's constantly stress to these people. You don't see that on shows on like MSNBC, shows that people like us would watch. You get the news, you get get facts, but they don't keep reinforcing the message. You only see it on the blogs, Huffington Post or Daily Kos or whatever, but it's not stressed on say like Olbermann or Maddow or these shows where people watching those shows obviously are interested in politics. They're watching these shows. I think they need to start drumming it into people's heads the way the other side, they take the page out of the playbook and start drumming it into people's heads the way the other side does, because it is
But effective. You know how the other side does it, though, Chris, is they do it with fear and paranoia, and they use a myopic, view, and they pick the three big ones. Gays are going to take over and they have an agenda. Abortion rights, where you care about the fetus but not when it's born and takes its first breath, and then stem cell research. And, they care about those things, so they get their people in line with that through the congregation, and this is all God's will. And it's really, really powerful. And so they instill fear and paranoia, and, you have to, who are you going to vote for? What typically, historically, unfortunately, is even though we oftentimes have more Democrats registered than Republicans, Democrats tend to pack up their toys and go into a corner and say, well, I'm just not happy with Obama. I really don't like what's going on. And they don't vote. And right now, the latest poll that came out was 57% of registered Republicans are going to vote in the midterm, 30% of registered Dems.
Right.
They don't win. We don't win because we don't show up.
Right. And this whole, there's nobody good to vote for, neither one. I don't like either one, so I'm not going to vote. Well, yeah. Right now, you got to vote for the lesser of two evils. If you have a bad
and we often do.
You don't want to
swallow it. We just have to do it. This is not, and I've been saying this recently. This is literally not a part. I've always been registered nonpartisan. I am not real happy with either party, I have to tell you. But honestly, at this point, we no longer have the luxury of the old Democrat versus Eisenhower Republican argument, which is, fiscal responsibility versus social compassion, and there's a blend in there. This is no longer the case. And it really hasn't been the case since the 80s, but it really got ramped up in 1992 when they were, the GOP was infested by not the religious right, but the Christian dominionists, which is a much more heavy-hitting movement. And when that happened, we no longer have just two-party, Republican versus Democrat, conservative, liberal. We now have, and this is the honest-to-God truth, we have freedom versus theocracy. And I know it sounds really extreme, but it's the bottom line.
Well, I agree with you, and they're getting so blatant about it, and I don't think people quite get this when they read these statements made by Huckabee and Gingrich and, some of these people where they expressly list these 7 mountains that you're talking about. Gingrich has that real site for real leadership for America.
And he's allowed himself to be on Pray and Act with Lou Engle.
Exactly, and they've got those 7 mountains in there. And then Glenn Beck, I mean, my gosh, he's got, he's in bed with
Glenn
these
Beck
people,
has just started getting in, mentioning the 7 mountains on one of his radio shows.
He did?
A little while
Oh,
back.
He
actually did. I caught that. I had to pass. I'm so busy. I just had to pass that one on to somebody else who's Bruce Wilson, the one of the co-founders of Talk to Action, who's does fantastic work in investigating and writing about all this stuff. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times, if I'm too busy, I'll notice something and just have to pass it on to him or one of the other researchers I know that are focusing on those. These movements, and also know more about them than I do too, because that's their focus.
But I think that when the average person sees that, they go, "Oh, well, that's nice. Yeah, we'd like to have, a nicer media. There's too much violence on TV, and there's too much pornography, and there's too many, negative types of things being portrayed in the media." So they just look at that, and it's like, "Oh, okay, that's nice. I can go with that." You know what I mean? And I don't think that they understand the depth and Mikey said it, the evil that's associated with this kind of thing. Because, part of the problem is that this stuff is just not reported.
Well,
and then when we do talk about it, we sound like we're not.
We don't want to think that that's what's going on. We have been very privileged in this country in many ways, even though, we had the Civil War and horrible losses in war. We have been very, very privileged. We have had freedoms that most people have not had. And so the idea of a theocracy taking hold on this turf is just absolutely incomprehensible to most people. And the reality is that it can happen. Mm-hmm. It really can happen. But we have the power right now to stop it, because these people are in a minority. And when I was a lobbyist for a couple of decades in Alaska, you hear the old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the attention. And that's what we're hearing. The Tea Party movement, the Sarah Palins, the Michelle Bachmans, the Christine O'Donnells, these are screechers. The Sharon Angles, they are the screechers. Somebody actually had the audacity to call Mikey that. But I'm not even going to credit them with who it was, because it's just so absurd. These people are the screechers. They're loud, they're verbose, they're in the face, they're combative, they puff their chest up and they get in there. They're not the majority. But unfortunately, our news environment is no longer news. It's infotainment. I don't care who it is, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, whoever. If Walter Cronkite was alive and still doing the news, we would have that kind of character. We would have a completely different reporting on this stuff.